Hello and welcome to Bible Run, a family fun card game based on the 5 books of Moses. From the contents in the box and setup to strategy and gameplay, this video provides everything you need to know about the game. Each Bible Run game consists of Bible question cards, playing cards, placeholder cards, and 1 die. The biblical aspect of the game is to bring people together through the wisdom of Moses. As a card game, the goal is to obtain playing cards used to make runs of 3 numbers such as 1, 2, 3, or 9, 10, 11 to close each of the 5 books of Moses. The first player to close all of the books wins. Each player is given 5 placeholder cards in the following order: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, with the open book side facing up. 5 playing cards are then taken from the deck and placed in the middle of the table with the numbers facing upwards. Here we can see the numbers 1, 3, 11, 13, and a change-up card. 5 playing cards are dealt to each player with the numbers facing downwards. Each player picks up the cards dealt to them, making sure that no other players can see their hand. In the case of this player, the cards dealt are 2, 5, 10, 13, and a wild card. From the 5 cards dealt, any 3 numbers or wild cards must be placed facing up on a player's own placeholder cards. In this example, card number 2 was placed on Genesis, number 10 on Leviticus, and number 13 on Deuteronomy. Note, players may not put 2 player cards on the same placeholder card during this stage of the game. The Exodus and Numbers placeholders are left open to start new runs later in the game. The 2 remaining cards, in this case cards number 5 and a wild card, are left for later use in the game. At the start of the game, each player identifies their level of biblical knowledge or skill set: advanced, intermediate, or beginner. The players then roll the die. The person who gets the highest number goes first. On a turn, a player must take 1 card from the table and place it on one of their other placeholder cards. For example, the player might take card number 3 from the table and put it below the number 2 card of the Genesis, or take card number 11 from the table and place it on card number 10 below Leviticus. As illustrated by the video, there are many possible cards that can be used. Once a playing card is put on a placeholder, the player must attempt to answer a biblical question to keep the card. To better understand which questions to ask and how to keep the playing cards, let us look at the Bible question cards. Each card has 1 question from each of the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Bible question asked is determined by the placeholder card on which a playing card is placed. From the example, if the number 3 card from the table is placed on playing card number 2 under the Genesis placeholder, a Genesis question is asked. Each question has a source reference. The multiple choice and hint options were specifically designed to accommodate the biblical skill set of each player. For players with an advanced skill set, Bible questions are read to these players who are not to be given hints or the multiple choice options. For players with an intermediate skill set, Bible questions are provided to these players with the multiple choice or the hint options. For both of these skill sets, if the Bible question is answered correctly, the player may keep the playing card on the space holder and a new playing card is taken from the deck, so there are always 5 playing cards on the table. For players with a beginner skill set, similar to those with an intermediate skill set, beginners are given multiple choice or hint options. However, if a question is answered incorrectly, the player still has a chance of obtaining the playing card. To do this, the player must take the die and guess either low or high. A roll of numbers 1, 2, or 3 is considered low, and numbers 4, 5, and 6 are high. If the player guesses correctly, the playing card from the table is kept on the placeholder. For players of all skill sets, if the playing card is not obtained, the playing card is returned to where it was taken from the table. Change-up cards add an element of strategy and unpredictability to the game. These cards give the card holder an extra turn, make other players lose a turn, change the direction of the game, take cards from other players, and make other players reopen books that have been closed. Change-up cards may be used at any time during the game and must be placed at the bottom of the deck after being used. These cards are not put on placeholder cards. Change-up cards may be obtained in the following 2 ways. 1. As one of the 5 playing cards dealt to each player at the beginning of the game. During the game, a player change-up card may appear as one of the 5 playing cards in the middle of the table. When this happens, players must each guess a number from 1 to 6 and roll the die. Whoever guesses the correct number gets to keep the change-up card. Warning: when rolling to obtain a change-up card, if a player currently has 2 or more change-up cards in his or her hand and guesses the correct number from the die roll, the player loses all of his or her change-up cards, including the one in the middle of the table. These cards are returned to the bottom of the deck. In order to win the game, players must get a run of 3 numbers to close each of the 5 books of Moses, as well as getting rid of the 2 remaining cards in their hand. Using the example in this video, the 2 remaining cards in the player's hand are number 5 and a wild card. These cards are used similar to a typical turn. However, instead of using a card from the table, the player takes one of his or her cards and places it on a placeholder card. Once the card is placed, the player is asked a question. If answered correctly, the card remains on the placeholder. If answered incorrectly, the player must keep the card in their hand and use it on another run. In the event that a player does not have either of the 2 remaining cards in their hands, but there are no other usable cards in the middle of the table, the cards in the table are replaced with 5 new cards from the deck. The cards on the table are continually replaced until the player is able to take a needed card. Players in this situation do not lose a turn when trying to obtain a usable card from the table. Warning: if a player still has one or both of the remaining 2 cards in their hand, but nowhere to put them on the placeholder cards, the player may exchange their unplayable card for another one from the deck. However, doing this costs a turn. And if they don't get a card they can use, then they must use another turn to draw again. Final notes: when a playing card is placed on a placeholder card, it cannot be moved unless specified by a change-up card. To make run of these numbers, the playing cards do not have to be obtained in order. For example, a run can be 1, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 1, or 3, 2, 1, etc. When making a run of 3 numbers, playing cards number 1 may not come after number 13. For example, 12, 13, 1, or 1, 13, 12, or 13, 1, 12 are not permitted. If a player has a change-up card, such as making another player reopen a closed book, and the holder of the card does not know who to use it on, All the players must guess a number, and the player that rolls the correct number has to reopen any of their closed books.